would be hard. Why? Because if you're Harry, you know, and he seemed like a great guy, man, that's why I'm not married to an actress. It's like, Harry, I don't want to see my wife kissing somebody.
Kevin Costner, a towering icon of Hollywood prestige and discretion, has just made a statement that sent shockwaves far beyond the red carpet. Spoken quietly but weighted with consequence, his words have reportedly struck at the very heart of Prince Harry's world, forcing him to reassess loyalties, motives, and truths long taken for granted. From elite charity circles in California to whispers echoing through royal corridors, this moment marks a turning point, one that threatens reputations, relationships, and carefully guarded narratives. So, could this single revelation be the crack that changes everything? A line drawn in Montecito. Few moments in modern celebrity culture feel as heavy as the one Kevin Costner created with a handful of calm sentences. Spoken without anger and without drama, his words landed with unusual force, carrying the weight of a man whose reputation was built long before social media outrage and brand alliances became the norm. Costner, a Hollywood veteran known as much for restraint as for influence, made it clear that Meghan Markle would not be attending his private charity gathering in Santa Barbara. What followed was not gossip, but a statement that reshaped conversations on both sides of the Atlantic. Costner did not raise his voice or stretch the moment. He simply closed the door. From a quiet studio overlooking the Pacific, days before his annual charity event, he answered a casual question about the guest list. His response stripped away comfort and illusion in one breath. Meghan was not invited. Then came the explanation, delivered with the steady tone of someone accustomed to weighing words. He spoke of an unwanted personal approach, of firm boundaries, and of associations he wanted no part of. He distanced himself from scandals that have stained powerful names, drawing a sharp line between his world and hers. Those remarks echoed far beyond California. Within hours, digital shockwaves reached London, Washington, and everywhere royal drama still holds emotional weight. This was not a tabloid leak or a whispered claim shielded by anonymity. It was a direct statement from a figure whose career spans decades of credibility. In Hollywood, that matters. When someone like Costner speaks without theatrics, the industry listens. The setting deepened the symbolism. Santa Barbara and neighboring Montecito are more than scenic enclaves with ocean views and manicured hedges. They represent an American elite that values discretion, legacy, and earned respect. This is where influential figures come to escape noise. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle understood the meaning of that address when they chose Montecito as their new home after leaving the United Kingdom in 2020. The move was more than a real estate decision. It was a statement of intent. They were not just relocating, they were attempting to reposition themselves within a new social order, one that blends fame, philanthropy, and influence. Acceptance into this space required validation from those already seated at the table. Costner's annual charity event, once known as 1805 Live and later rebranded, has long been part of that validation system. Held in Santa Barbara, it blends Hollywood elegance with a serious cause, supporting the mental health and well-being of first responders. Firefighters, paramedics, and law enforcement officers are the heart of the mission, and the guest list reflects that purpose. Those invited are not just famous faces. They are people trusted to lend credibility, funds, and genuine concern. For the Sussexes, an invitation would have signaled something far deeper than a night of networking. It would have confirmed their arrival into a protected inner circle of American power, one built on long-standing reputations rather than inherited titles. That is why Costner's refusal resonated so strongly. It was not a personal drama played out for attention, it was a denial of access. What gave the situation its sharp edge was the reason behind that denial. Costner did not frame his words as a misunderstanding or a scheduling issue. He referenced a personal boundary that had been crossed and made it clear he had no interest in entanglement with controversies that continue to haunt certain royal connections. By doing so, he placed responsibility where he believed it belonged, without embellishment or apology. Hollywood understood the message immediately. This was a judgment call made by someone whose career has survived shifting trends, public scandals, and industry upheaval. Costner's authority comes from longevity and consistency. He represents a class of influence that does not rely on constant visibility. When such a figure quietly steps back, others take note. Across the ocean, the implications were equally uncomfortable. The British monarchy has spent years attempting to manage the fallout from past scandals while maintaining an image of stability. Any new association with controversy threatens that balance. Costner's remarks reopened conversations many hoped were settled, tying modern celebrity culture to unresolved royal shadows. The aftermath has been described as a reckoning centered in Santa Barbara, but its reach is far wider. It exposes the difference between fame and belonging, between access and acceptance. It highlights how American elite circles operate by unspoken rules that cannot be overridden by titles or media campaigns. In the end, Costner did not accuse, argue, or campaign. He simply stated his position and moved on. That quiet certainty proved more powerful than outrage ever could. A single boundary, clearly defined, reshaped narratives, challenged ambitions, and reminded everyone watching that some doors only open for those who understand the cost of crossing lines. And as those lines were crossed, what unseen tension was already building, turning what should have been a celebration into a moment heavy with unease. When Hollywood politeness cracked, there was a strange mood in the air that year, one that many guests noticed even before a single speech was made or a camera flashed. By 2023, what should have been a smooth, celebratory gathering, instead, carried a quiet strain that never fully lifted. Those who attended later said the discomfort was easy to sense, even if no one dared name it out loud. Smiles were offered, hands were shaken, yet something about the arrangement felt forced, almost rehearsed, rather than genuine. Behind the scenes, the reason was less about friendship and more about business. William Morris Endeavor, widely known as WME, as one of the most powerful talent agencies in the world, WME had a clear interest in presenting its biggest names as equals, moving within the same elite circles. The expectation was simple on paper. Top clients should appear side by side. In reality, the pairing was awkward from the start. Several people close to the event later revealed that Costner did not welcome the idea. He was, by many accounts, placed under intense pressure to agree. The result was a public appearance that looked polished on video, but felt stiff in person. Footage from that evening shows Costner standing beside Prince Harry, composed yet distant. His exchanges with Meghan were brief and formal, almost carefully limited. They smiled when required, but the warmth never reached their eyes. It was less a shared moment and more a performance for the cameras. What makes that 2023 appearance so important is how sharply it contrasts with what followed. When the event returned in 2024, the balance had shifted completely. This time only Prince Harry attended. Meghan was absent, and whispers spread quickly through Santa Barbara's social circles. The public explanation pointed to illness, but privately, another story was taking shape, one that suggested frustration.
It happened a few weeks ago, earlier this month, here at our cottage.
Unmet expectations, and a clash over status. According to reports later supported by royal commentators like Neil Sean, Meghan had hoped to take on a co-presenting role on stage. To her, this was not a small detail. It was seen as recognition, a position she believed matched her profile. However, the organizers, said to be operating under Costner's direction, declined the request. Their decision was described as polite but firm. When that door closed, Meghan reportedly chose not to attend at all. For many observers, this moment marked a turning point. What may have been intended as a show of strength or leverage instead painted a different picture. Critics argued that the move clashed with the spirit of the event, which focused on service rather than spotlight. Rather than elevating her position, the absence raised questions about priorities and motives. The quiet tension of 2023 had now turned into a visible divide. Yet the most striking development came later. By 2025, Costner appeared ready to draw a clear line. In a pre-event interview ahead of his charity function, he made a statement that stunned both Hollywood insiders and the public. It was not wrapped in vague language or softened by polite distance. Instead, it was direct, deliberate, and impossible to misread. In an industry where conflict is often handled through subtle leaks and carefully worded press lines, Costner's approach stood out. After more than 40 years in Hollywood, he understood the rules better than most, and he chose to break them. Public relations experts quickly noted that such openness usually signals the end of all private negotiations. When someone speaks that plainly, it suggests every quiet attempt to resolve the issue has already failed. Psychologists who study public behavior added another layer to the moment. They described it as a firm boundary being set after prolonged pressure. Costner's words were not emotional outbursts. They were calculated and final. He was protecting something deeply personal: his home, his charity, and the values attached to both. The message was unmistakable. A certain kind of fame, even one linked to royalty, was no longer welcome in his space. Looking back, the scattered moments tell a larger story. The uneasy smiles of 2023, the noticeable absence in 2024, and the bold statement in 2025 all connect, even if they didn't unfold in neat order. This was not a single disagreement, but a slow build of strain, shaped by expectations, power dynamics, and clashing ideas of importance.
No, it's been lockdown.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've had a chance to see LA.
What remains most compelling is not the gossip itself, but what it reveals about modern celebrity culture. Influence can open doors, but it can also close them just as fast. In this case, the polished image of unity could not hide the cracks beneath. Eventually, those cracks became impossible to ignore, and when they did, one of Hollywood's most seasoned figures chose clarity over courtesy. In doing so, Kevin Costner reminded everyone watching that not all alliances are meant to last, and that sometimes the strongest statement is simply deciding who no longer belongs at your table. So when someone quietly decides who no longer belongs at their table, what really happened in that moment Kevin Costner described, and why did it change everything? She made an approach toward me. The sentence sounds calm, almost gentle, yet it carries a weight that is hard to miss. It suggests distance, discomfort, and a moment when something crossed an invisible line. When Kevin Costner later chose those words, he avoided drama while still painting a clear picture of rejection, not loud or cruel, but firm enough to matter. That single statement soon grew into something larger, because it echoed stories that had been whispered for years inside Hollywood's closed rooms. The moment itself traces back to a charity event in 2023, held in an elegant setting where soft music mixed with polite laughter and glasses clinked late into the evening. Costner was there as a respected veteran, known not just for his long career, but also for guarding his private life carefully. Conversations that night flowed easily at first. Film ideas were shared, charitable projects discussed, and introductions made the way they always are at such gatherings. Nothing appeared unusual on the surface, but according to people familiar with what followed, the tone shifted. Compliments began to pile up, no longer sounding like simple praise, but more like something planned. Talk of future work drifted into suggestions that felt personal rather than professional. The space between career interest and personal closeness narrowed quickly. For Costner, a married man with a reputation for clear boundaries, the direction felt wrong. He did not raise his voice or draw attention. Instead, he chose the quiet power of stepping back, ending the exchange politely but unmistakably. At that moment, a line was drawn. What made the incident resonate was not just the event itself, but the context surrounding it. Long before that night, similar stories had followed Meghan since her early acting days on Suits in the early 2000s. They were rarely written down in major headlines. Instead, they lived in anonymous posts, private conversations, and low voices exchanged at industry dinners. These accounts often described a driven actress who understood the value of access and knew how to find it. Hollywood, after all, is built on connections. Success often depends on being seen, remembered, and invited back. For many aspiring actors, charm becomes a tool, and ambition a survival skill. Supporters argue, with reason, that such behavior is praised when displayed by men. Confidence becomes leadership. Persistence becomes strength. Yet the recurring detail in these accounts was not ambition alone, but discomfort. People spoke of encounters that felt overly familiar, too fast, and oddly transactional, as if warmth came with expectations attached. These stories gained new meaning once Meghan's status changed. A royal title carries its own kind of gravity, especially in an industry that is drawn to symbols of power. Doors that once opened slowly now seem to swing wider. Around this time, the Sussexes signed a major deal with WME, a powerful agency known for shaping high-profile careers. The agreement was described as historic, and with that came pressure. Agencies are paid to deliver results, and big investments demand visible returns. Insiders suggest that this pressure may have led to carefully arranged meetings and introductions, placing established figures like Costner in situations they had not sought. For someone who values independence, such orchestration can feel intrusive. In this light, Costner's response becomes more than a personal refusal. It reads as resistance to a system attempting to push a relationship that did not feel earned. When Costner eventually spoke, his words carried unusual force precisely because of their restraint. He did not accuse, he did not explain every detail. He simply stated what happened from his point of view. That simplicity transformed long-standing murmurs into something harder to dismiss. A respected voice had confirmed without embellishment that the discomfort others had described was real. The reaction also exposed a deeper misunderstanding about Hollywood's power structure. Titles may attract attention, but they do not replace trust. Legacy in this world is built over decades through consistency and respect.
He's with a man named Donnie Weeboy.
Among its most established figures, reputation matters more than novelty, and influence cannot be assumed. It must be earned, interaction by interaction. In the end, the story is less about scandal and more about boundaries. It is about how ambition can be read differently depending on how it is delivered, and how even in an industry famous for excess, quiet refusal can speak the loudest. Costner's choice to step back and later to speak carefully, reminded Hollywood of something it often forgets. Access is not entitlement, and respect is never automatic. What happens when access is mistaken for entitlement? And how did one chilling line from Kevin Costner turn that quiet lesson into a moment echoing from Hollywood to Buckingham Palace? A single sentence that poisoned the well. There are moments when a few words carry the weight of 1,000 pages, and this was one of them. With a line that felt borrowed from a dark novel rather than a public exchange, Kevin Costner cast a shadow that stretched from Hollywood to Buckingham Palace. In one breath, he placed the Duchess of Sussex beside the most radioactive name ever to touch modern royalty, binding her by association to a scandal that has already scarred the crown beyond repair. No evidence was offered, no explanation followed, yet the impact was immediate and brutal. The power lay not in detail, but in proximity. The Epstein saga has long stood as a symbol of corrupted power, a grim story that transcended borders and drew in figures from politics, finance, media, and royalty. It was never only about crimes committed in secret places, it was about how influence protected itself. For the British monarchy, this story has had a single, lingering face. Prince Andrew's closeness to Jeffrey Epstein has haunted the institution for years, becoming impossible to escape after his disastrous 2019 BBC Newsnight interview. His legal settlement with Virginia Giuffre, announced in early 2022, and his swift removal from public duties marked a turning point. Yet, even after he retreated from public life, the stain remained, clinging to the monarchy like a ghost that refuses to leave the dining room. Behind palace walls, damage control has been a constant exercise. Observers have long noted a curious rhythm in press coverage. When attention on Prince Andrew grows intense, a flood of negative stories about Prince Harry and Meghan often follows. Whether coincidence or strategy, the effect has been the same. Public focus shifts, outrage scatters, and the most dangerous questions lose momentum. This pattern fueled claims that the Sussexes became a convenient distraction, absorbing heat meant for a far more destructive scandal. Costner's statement shattered that fragile balance. By naming Andrew and Meghan in the same breath, he collapsed two separate crises into one toxic narrative. The walls that once kept these controversies apart suddenly fell away. What had been managed through separation was now fused, creating a single, darker picture that could no longer be neatly boxed or redirected. Rumors linking Meghan to the Epstein world have existed for years, mostly buried in the far corners of the internet, unsupported and widely dismissed. Some whispered that her early years in Hollywood placed her on the edges of elite social circles. Others claimed, without proof, that Ghislaine Maxwell had spoken about her in private. None of these stories ever crossed into credible reporting. They lacked substance, sources, and verification. On their own, they faded as quickly as they appeared. What changed was the messenger. Costner is not an anonymous voice hiding behind a screen. He is a respected figure with decades of standing in the entertainment industry.
You didn't see fit to share this with me.
Someone assumed to move within elite spaces, where information, gossip, and half-truths flow freely. His words did not create facts, but they breathed life into old rumors, giving them a visibility they had never achieved before. In a world where Hollywood wealth and global influence often overlap, the mere suggestion of insider knowledge can be enough to ignite suspicion. For King Charles III, this moment strikes at the heart of his fragile mission. Since ascending the throne in 2022, following the long and turbulent final years of Queen Elizabeth II's reign, his goal has been clear. He has sought calm, restraint, and a slimmer monarchy that could survive in a skeptical modern age. Stability, not spectacle, was meant to define this era. Costner's words dragged the institution back into the gutter, reviving the very chaos the new king hoped to bury. The palace now faces a trap with no clean exit. Any response from Meghan risks reopening the full record of Andrew's disgrace, pulling his past back into headlines across London, New York, and beyond. Silence, however, allows the association to linger and harden in the public mind. The unspoken link between the king's brother and his estranged daughter-in-law becomes a quiet poison, eating away at the crown's claim to moral authority. This is not merely another scandal in a long list. It cuts deeper because it strikes at legitimacy itself. The monarchy survives on trust, tradition, and the belief that it stands above the worst excesses of power. When names connected to exploitation and secrecy are spoken alongside those meant to represent renewal and change, that belief begins to crack. Costner's sentence did not accuse, prove, or explain. It simply connected. And in doing so, it delivered a blow that years of careful image management may not be able to undo. Could one unexpected voice, spoken far from palace walls, deliver a blow so powerful that years of careful image building suddenly began to unravel before the world? When a single voice shook the crown. A crown under strain does not always crack under open attack. Sometimes it trembles because of a single unexpected voice spoken far from palace walls. That is how this story unfolds, not in London, but across the ocean, where a television interview conducted in California sent a wave of quiet alarm through Buckingham Palace. What sounded like a casual exchange to viewers reportedly landed inside royal walls with deep unease. Reviving fears, the family believed they had successfully pushed thousands of miles away. For years, the royal household worked carefully to keep distance between the institution and the Sussexes, convinced that whatever storms followed them were contained to life in the United States. That belief shattered the moment the interview aired. Suddenly, a private concern became a public one again. And worse, it merged with other unresolved embarrassments the monarchy was already managing. Insiders whispered that this was not just another headline, It was confirmation of long-held doubts about Meghan's judgment and the circles she moved in. At the heart of the anxiety lies a question the monarchy avoids unless forced to confront it. What happens when royal titles themselves become liabilities? Removing a title is not symbolic theater. It is a heavy constitutional step tied to history, law, and precedent. The most cited example dates back to 1917, at the height of World War I, when the Titles Deprivation Act was passed. That law allowed Parliament, with the monarch's approval, to strip titles from those who sided with Britain's enemies. Though the circumstances today are different, the principle remains unchanged. Titles can be removed when actions are judged deeply damaging to the crown. This is not merely theoretical. In recent years, King Charles quietly approved steps to remove remaining styles and honors from Prince Andrew, setting a modern precedent for handling scandal within the family. That move signaled something important. Patience has limits. According to well-placed sources, a similar file is now being assembled behind closed doors, this time focused on Meghan. Within that growing dossier, the comments made during the California interview are said to hold particular weight. The man who spoke was not a tabloid figure or a disgruntled insider. He was Kevin Costner, wealthy, famous, and widely viewed as independent of royal politics. His claim that Meghan made an uninvited approach, alongside suggestions of links touching the Epstein controversy, carries influence precisely because of who he is. To palace strategists, testimony like that is dangerous. It is calm, credible, and difficult to dismiss. For King Charles, the situation presents a painful divide between duty and blood. Those close to him say he remains a father burdened by sadness over his fractured relationship with Prince Harry. Yet he is also the sovereign, sworn to protect an institution that must endure beyond personal feelings. Years of public criticism from the Sussexes have already worn his patience thin, and many believe the latest developments pushed it to the edge. Prince William, by contrast, is said to view the crisis with a colder lens. As the future king, he reportedly sees ongoing controversy as a threat to the stability of his eventual reign. From that perspective, clean and lasting separation appears less cruel and more necessary. Stability, after all, is the currency of monarchy. Still, constitutional experts warn that moving forward would be risky. Any attempt to strip titles would likely require a formal petition to Parliament, triggering fierce political debate and relentless media scrutiny.
Thank you, nice to see you. Bye.
Such a spectacle would be deeply uncomfortable for a monarchy that survives on restraint and tradition. There's also no doubt that Meghan would fight back, both in court and through public relations, turning the process into a prolonged battle. Yet public sentiment appears to be shifting. In the United Kingdom, petitions calling for the removal of the Sussex titles have gathered hundreds of thousands of signatures. What once sounded extreme is now openly discussed. Many believe Costner's words may be the tipping point, the moment when private concern turns into actionable resolve. If such a step were taken, it would mark an irreversible end to the Sussexes' royal chapter. For Harry, losing his birthright would mean complete separation from family, heritage, and homeland. For the monarchy, it would feel like a painful admission of failure, yet possibly a necessary act to ensure survival. What began as a simple interview in a California studio has grown into something far larger. A quiet inquiry has become a reckoning, forcing the House of Windsor to confront questions it hoped would never return. The whispers have grown louder, and truths long buried are pressing forward, demanding to be heard. So, what do you think Kevin Costner revealed that has Harry questioning everything he believed about Meghan? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe.